Hey everyone, welcome into our week 5 Sun Times game week. We've got a lot of exciting stuff. We got to go back, talk about week 4. We have some breaking news, obviously basketball information, but first we want to thank our content partner ABC7 who's live streaming our broadcast right now as well. I'm Annie Costable, this is Michael O'Brien, Beth Long, and we are coming to you live from the Chicago Sun Times studio. So without further ado, again, let's get right into some of that basketball news.
It's Tuesdays, we had another commitment, Marquise Kennedy from Brother Rice, who I know even a lot of you guys that follow it pretty closely he's not a big name. He had a good year last year, but he's not a huge name. He started at Crete Monee, transferred to Brother Rice, and he's just an excellent scorer, blew up really big this summer, had a Florida State and a Wichita State offer, but he chose Loyola today. And it's kind of the first real sign we've had that Loyola's run to the Final Four is going to translate to recruiting success. You know, they picked up, Tom Welch and some other good players, but this is a kid that chose Loyola over a much bigger school from a bigger conference that's more established. So it's a real win for Loyola. And Kennedy's the type of kid that, we don't have, the senior class isn't loaded. He's going to have a high profile this year. This is going to raise it a little bit more. And the way he can put points up, he's going to be a big star this year. This is going to add kind of a nice storyline to the season, having a kid like that going to Loyola.
Before we switch gears and you talk about the next topic, what actually is this going to do for Loyola's recruitment in terms of getting the top talent from the Chicagoland area?
Yeah, that's the first thing you have to do is, lock up your home. And I guess the other big point with that we should mention is he's the third player from the Illinois Wolves club program that has gone to Loyola. And there's been a lot of talk about the McIrvin Fire Club program kind of having a pipeline to Illinois and now maybe Chicago State after they hired Lance Irvin. But there's definitely a pipeline from the Illinois Wolves to Loyola. We've seen that now. This is the third kid in a row. So that's very big now that that's been established.
And our next topic, obviously still on the basketball train.
News we broke on the website, the Chicago Elite Classic, always one of the biggest events of the whole year in prep sports. The lineup was announced, and kind of maybe the big news was the game's leaving UIC. No more pavilion. It's going to be at Wintrust Arena, so we're actually going to watch some public league teams play at Wintrust Arena, which is kind of a shock. It's Friday, November 30th, and Saturday, December 1st. Friday starts out with a girls' game, Young against Montverde, and then 2 games with Catholic schools, St. Rita against St. Ignatius. And then the big matchup everybody likes on Friday night, Fenwick versus Oak Park. There's always a big crowd for that, those schools.
Yeah, definitely. They have huge student sections.
And they don't like one another.
No, not at all. They're not friendly.
There's usually some kind of trouble that the student section has gotten in. That one's fun. It should be good on the court this year, maybe a little down from the last 2 years, but there's enough going on in the stands that's fun. And then Saturday, oh boy,
Saturday we have some exciting games.
There's 8 games. That's just kind of a horrible idea to try to put 8 games in one day.
But they're exciting games.
I don't know how anybody's going to get through it all, but
I
we're going to try.
think they'll be just fine.
Yeah,
We've got some exciting teams playing.
Bloom, West Aurora. Bloom's going to be one of the best teams in the area. Bloomington against St. Louis Chaminade, which should be a really fun matchup. Then Uplift and Evanston, which for locals might be the best game of the day. Both of those teams are going to be definitely top 20, maybe top 10. And then Huntington Prep, who Annie knows a little bit about, against Sunrise Christian. You want to tell us about Huntington Prep?
So I just came back from Mississippi, and Sunrise Christian Academy and Huntington Prep both have kids from the Jackson metro area. Jamin Brakefield, he's a top player in the 2020 class. He's not committed yet, but he has offers from schools like just pretty much every school, every top program in the country has offered Jamin Brakefield. So he's definitely going to be a kid you want to watch during that game. And then also Austin Crowley, who just transferred this past season to Sunrise Christian Academy. I don't know yet how much he's going to play, but he was one of our top 12 players in Mississippi. He was a Dandy Dozen, so he's definitely a top talented kid. But it just is a matter of whether or not he'll get on be in the starting 5 rotation. We'll
yeah,
have to
because
wait.
Sunrise they're one of those prep schools. They're loaded. They have one local kid that started at Mattea Valley, Malik Hall. He left after his sophomore year and reclassified. And then we've got the 4 public league powers, all against out-of-state schools. Starts out with Morgan Park against Vashon. everybody who was at the Elite Classic last year saw Vashon and Mario McKinney. He was just fabulous. I rarely get all that excited about players I don't normally cover, but he was amazing.
This is true.
Yeah, so that's
very true.
So that's going to be Adam Miller against Mario McKinney. That's just going to be a fabulous guard matchup. And then Bogan against Dominican out of Wisconsin. It's going to be interesting to see Bogan on the big stage. They've been a good team for a decade now, but they don't usually get these invites to the big college arenas. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see. Then the big one, Simeon against St. Vincent St. Mary. That
Big
is
matchup.
Derrick Rose and Jabari Parker's high school against LeBron James's high school. So you can't get much bigger than that. That should be a lot of fun. And then Young against Mater Dei. Mater Dei, we've seen it a lot
million
at
times
this
at this, yeah.
event. You know, they're always very loaded. And that's going to be a nice test to see how we stack up against the rest of the country, because Young is most likely going to be our number one team. And we'll see if they can hang with Mater Dei. I really have no clue.
Coach Smith and Coach Slaughter from Whitney Young and from Simeon have been putting this together for how many years now?
That's a good question. At least 5,
Yeah.
maybe more.
And
Yeah.
I remember just a few years ago talking to Coach Smith about why they wanted to bring a tournament like this to Chicago, and it obviously was just to showcase Chicago's top talent against talent across the country. And you're going to see that, like you said, specifically in those games on Saturday. Simeon versus St. Vincent St. Mary is obviously going to be
And we'll probably have multiple mayoral candidates there too, now that the election's going on.
Usually it's just Rom. Usually Rom
they'll
shows
all
up.
be there. It'll be
It
like,
would not be basketball without a secret mayoral race.
yeah, this whole
in the
basketball
gym.
season is going to be nothing but Friday night and mayoral candidates, and it's going to get a
Hands
little
will
annoying.
be shaking hands throughout the entire
Kissing babies.
The whole thing.
We're into it.
The
All
whole
right,
thing.
football. We ready for,
Let's get into some
yes.
football. Beth, we'd like you to break down the new Super 25. A lot of movement, a lot of, I guess you could say there were a couple upsets. They didn't really look like upsets from the scores, but why don't you break down for us what's going on in the Super 25? Who's in, who's out, who moved where?
Yeah, I can tell you, we're going to be talking about Evanston a lot this year between basketball and in football. They were the highest debut in the Super 25 at number 10, but I will take you from 25 down. Number 25, Bolingbrook, with a loss that wasn't quite as bad as it looked on paper to HF. Number 24, Hinsdale Central. Number 23, Prairie Ridge. Whoever thought that they might be third place in the Fox Valley Conference? That blows my mind, but right now that's kind of where you're sitting, Prairie Ridge. 22, Stevenson, one of our first new faces. 21, Huntley. 20, Wheaton Warrenville South, another new face. 19, Phillips, still hanging in there. 18, Loyola, still hanging in there. 17, Willowbrook. 16, Montini. 15, Cary Grove, a third new team in the Super 25. 14, Marist. 13, Richards. 12, Barrington. So they drop after losing to Evanston. 11, Mount Carmel. 10, Evanston, like I mentioned at the very beginning here. 9, Glenbard West, holding steady at that 9th position. 8, Maine South, also holding steady at that 8th position. A pretty big jump here. Brother Rice, number 7, up from number 14. Another quality win under their belt this week.
Definitely
A really quality
yeah.
win, 35-3 over Loyola. 6, Simeon, another big jump. Another quality win for them this week too. 5, the top 5 stayed pretty steady here. 5 is Oswego, 4 is Homewood Flossmoor, 3 is Nazareth, 2 is Batavia, and number 1, still Lincoln Way East.
Let's talk about Evanston a little bit. Someone brought them up last week on our live stream, which leads me to say this. Please submit your questions. If you have anything you are wondering about, we'll answer it throughout the show. But someone did bring up Evanston last week and asked why they weren't in the Super 25 yet. Now they're in, and they're up there. So what was it that you were looking for before the season started, you know, from that team? What led you not to put them in there, and what are you seeing now that, you know, is deserving of them being in there?
Evanston has had some pretty big recruits over the last few years, and they haven't actually put together really great seasons. Super 25 is not about the top recruits, as much as some people want it to be. It's about the strongest teams, and up until this point, I just wasn't convinced that Evanston was one of the top 25 teams. I am, however, convinced that Barrington is in the conversation, and they handily beat Barrington, so hence the pretty big jump into the Super 25. What I was waiting on is just a quality win. So this is the point of the season where we know some about some teams because we know their quarterback is back from last year, their whole defensive line is back, offensive line, whatever it is. And there are other teams that we don't know much about. And Evanston was one of those teams that has a lot of the key players. They have some solid athletes on the team, and just how well would they stack up against others in their conference and others in the Super 25, it turns out pretty well. So they debut at number 10.
Do you think, I shouldn't cause trouble here, but Evanston loves it when I doubt them. What do you think the chances are that Evanston and Barrington are in the Super 25 at the end of the season?
Good question.
I think pretty good. I mean,
you don't think that maybe just because Barrington happened to beat Maine South in that fluky game, they deserve the ranking?
I have seen Maine South live this year, and even if it was a fluke, Barrington's got to be pretty good to beat that team. That is not a team that would lay down and die. It's a similar conversation with Loyola, right? So by beating Loyola, Brother Rice, and I believe one of you guys saw Loyola the first week of the year, right? Or second week?
Second. I saw them the second
and
week.
we're impressed, right?
No, they looked good against New Trier, people said. I wasn't there, but that's the only win they have locally.
Oh, I mean, I don't doubt that. And to me, a win over Loyola for like a Brother Rice actually just pads how good I think Brother Rice is, rather than how bad Loyola is. And until someone that just like really, really, really doesn't deserve to win against Loyola beats them, they'll probably hang in the Super 25, which we were just discussing before we went on the air. I think it's been at least the 4 years that I've been doing the rankings that Loyola has been in it every single week. And one more loss and
they haven't been 2-2
go.
since 1993.
That's crazy. I mean, Coach Hosek said at the beginning of the season that, you know, they weren't going to be the Loyola of the past, and we all kind of joked about that in week 1 of, you know, that's just his mentality all the time. But seeing them against Brother Rice, it was pretty shocking. I mean, Loyola, that is not a Loyola team I've ever been used to cover.
They just haven't been good the last 2 weeks. I mean, they've played good teams, but they've been destroyed by them. I mean, neither game was at any point close. Neither game that at any point it seemed like Loyola had a chance to win, which is really weird.
Those are probably words that like we've never said.
Yeah, but I would bet that Barrington and Evanston will both be gone by November.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. There's your challenge, Barrington and Evanston.
Let's talk a little bit about that Brother Rice Loyola game. Loyola made some uncharacteristic mistakes, I would say. 4
interceptions.
That was just pretty shocking to see.
Yeah, it's just Loyola right now is in a lot of trouble. They can't run the ball, and so that leads their quarterback Matthew Schultz to have to make some tough decisions just to try to get something happening, and Brother Rice was able to take advantage of that. The big takeaway for me for Brother Rice was I feel like, you know, we saw Peyton Thorne. I saw him, the Western Michigan recruit that's at Naperville Central. He's a great quarterback. But other than that, I haven't seen a lot of just good high school quarterbacks this year. You know, really capable guys that controlled the team and can change a game. Well, that changed this weekend. John Bean from Brother Rice, he is a dynamite high school player. He's the type of kid that always makes the right decision, always gets at least a yard, even on a blown play. He was really, really impressive, and he's the type of guy I think that can take you pretty far. Dylan Summers, a kid who committed just yesterday, I think is a good wide receiver, and the defense, you know, Brother Rice proved that. So I'm interested in what Brother Rice's ceiling is, just how good they could be. I'm not really sure, but with a player like John Bean, who just always makes the right choice, they're going to be in good hands.
What is the biggest difference from last year to this season? Because the fact that they only won 2 games last year and are now undefeated and have solid wins, they beat Marist, they beat Loyola now, like that, what changed in just a year?
I think part of it is just some of these kids are more experienced, and also the biggest question for me with teams like Brother Rice and Wheaton Warrenville South, 2 particularly that were 2-7 last year and are now 4-0 this year, which was wild to say, is just, yes, you're winning, and like you have to know how to win. So there'll be a point where it kind of becomes a choice rather than just by chance we showed up and won. And when they head into the playoffs, like they have to learn how to win and expect to win. They're not the underdogs anymore. Like these teams are now in the Super 25. Teams are going to be coming for them. There's a target on their back, as I know everyone likes to say, and sometimes that makes you play differently.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And the Catholic Blues is just tough. You can be a good team and just kind of fall in a hole and get a bad record. We've seen that happen with Mount Carmel a little bit.
Loyola
in
this
some
year.
Of the years, Loyola this year. Because Brother Rice, I saw week 1 last year. They played Marist really tough. You know, that was not a bad team that week. The season just kind of went off the rails, I think, for them.
We do have a comment about Simeon. We always talk about their offense. I didn't know that we always talked about their offense, but what do we think about their defense? This person, Terrence Parker, says they're nasty.
They look pretty good against Phillips, that's
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely.
Yeah, they didn't. I mean, this season overall, they're not allowing many points at all. They have perspectives this week coming up, Simeon, so that'll be an interesting test. They're not a traditional power, but they do have some good athletes. I believe they have a kid who's getting recruited by the Power 5 conferences as well.
I stopped by Simeon late last week, and they just are a program. I mean, from talking to Coach, he said that they've had more talented teams, but this team is more of a unit, and he said that's what's making the biggest difference. I mean, you could see it in their practice, you could see it on the field. They really are an entire team unit, and I think that truly does make a huge difference. So
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Simeon has always